Hello. So another three today because again, no Are You Afraid of the Dark for me over the weekend and therefore no video on Monday. I'll get right into it. The Tale of the Nightly Neighbors was the first one watched for this, and I thought this was an episode of Goosebumps. I remember the episode. I just thought it was an episode of Goosebumps. But then the very last image, I remembered suddenly. Oh yes, this was something that they played on their commercials for the show, but also around Halloween every year they would play commercials with, I think, spookier images from all the shows, and one of them came from this. I guess a lot of them were probably Are You Afraid of Dark because it was the spooky show, but I'm pretty sure there were stuff from everything. Anyway, the final image of this episode was one that I saw a lot, and I definitely remember seeing the episode as a kid. Um, the uh, the Midnight Society starts with a strangely uh, philosophical, I'll say, discussion of why stories are scarier at night, and um, and I think that probably who was it? Storyteller Betty Ann for this one and the next one, and I think she's the one who brought it up because she was trying to set the mood of things that happen at night are automatically suspicious and things like that. So the premise of the story is that um, new neighbors move in across the street from uh, Emma and Day Day. I didn't catch if his name is David and Day Day is his nickname or what, but he is called Day Day, and she is Emma. Yes. So um, they are. Day Day's been watching. It looked like. Well, it was. I'm pretty sure Night of the Living Dead. Um, and and then Emma kind of sneaks up on him, scares him, and then says, "You shouldn't just spend all your time, uh, sitting around watching movies. You'll turn into Dad." And we never meet the dad, I don't think. But apparently he just does a lot of sitting around. And then they notice that neighbors are moving in at night. And I said to the supernatural force I live with, the malevolent supernatural force I live with, if we move into a house at any time, let us make sure that we move in the middle of the night, so people see us moving in at night. And then for the first month, let's only come out after sundown, just to screw with people. Now I've said it on the internet that that's the plan, but nobody watches these videos, so it's safe. But anyway, they move in the middle of the night, um, and they somewhere along the lines they find out that the new neighbors are from Ukraine. They're from Ukraine, and someone jokes maybe they're rogue KGB agents or something like that, like they're on the run or something. And you got to remember, this was only a couple years after the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed. I think that's how history happened. But this was only a few years after that, so I had to think about it a little bit. But I had the history to kind of get it. But mostly it's about whether or not they're vampires. I believe they learned that from the mailman, who they run into. Well, their mom literally runs into him because she's late for something, and the kids then help him pick up his mail, and he's got this bandage on his throat, and he's a little lethargic, and we see then in the next scene that a lot of people end up with band-aids on their throats. That he says he's got some strange disease. They've got some strange disease that's spreading. But he says that he started feeling it a little bit after the new neighbors, the Bronze, came to visit him. The Bronze are a mother and father and a son. They are all dressed in black, and they only come out at night. It's not the mailman, but rather a delivery man who reveals that they're from Ukraine, and I think makes the joke about KGB agents because he's delivering 2 giant refrigerators. And he says that the order says just leave them if nobody answers. Their car is in the driveway, but nobody answers. Later on in the evening, Emma and Day Day see the neighbors having no trouble lifting or getting the refrigerators in through the door. Um, and they notice that the neighbors are reclusive, and Emma has a nightmare in which the father vampire essentially does the Bela Lugosi, Christopher Lee, Frank Langella Dracula thing. He comes in through a window, there's a lot of fog, and he kind of floats along the fog low to the ground and almost bites her, and then she wakes up, and then she wakes up Day Day and explains, look, they're from this area, which is where Transylvania is. They must be vampires. I'm going to sneak into their basement tomorrow night after they go out, and I'm going to prove it. So breaking and entering sort of thing. Before she does that, though, she starts putting up garlic all over the place, and garlic, of course, smells like garlic. And Day Day says, or asks her why. She says, vampires don't like the smell of garlic. And he says, neither do I. Maybe I'm a vampire, and that is, if I didn't already know that I remembered this show, that would have been the line that did it. So they're watching the bronze come out, and then she goes over, and it turns out that the bronze, apparently they're going around visiting everybody at night, and they come this time to Emma and Day Day's. And Day Day has been told not to invite them in because that's the only way a vampire can come in is if they're invited in. But then his mom finds out, and she comes over and says, "Oh no, of course, come in." And they talk, and the family says that they are studying emergency healthcare, which if only they were, because somebody should, and it needs to be improved upon. They say it gets a bit bloody sometimes. Now, this might also mean just be a joke on, well, we go and we injure people and then they need the emergency services, and so we see it and we watch it, and, it does different things different times, and it could be improved upon. And then on their way out, they say, we'll be back. The father says, or one of them, I forget which one says we'll be back, but says it with a clearly trying to reference Arnold Schwarzenegger saying it as the Terminator. Day Day somehow gets across the street to the house and sneaks into the basement before the bronze. He must leave after they do, but he somehow gets to their house and into their basement, sneaks into their basement before they get back to warn Emma, and then they get out. But then they break into the basement again to try to. She's apparently good at cracking the locks that you turn. I forget what they're called, combination locks. And so she wants to get back in and open up the refrigerators and see what's in the refrigerators. And there's one more combination lock on a big closet that she doesn't try. She doesn't get around to trying to open. So let's see. They get in there. They find the bottles of blood, which come from, and this is in the daytime this time. They find bottles of blood, and then on their way out, they run into Mother and Father Braun in the daytime. And they think, oh, they can't be vampires if they're in the daytime. And they also, even though they're already out in the daytime in the sunlight, they've got these crosses made out of sticks. They try to lure them away, and the Brauns just kind of find it cute. And they said that their hours have changed. So they're going to the hospital. They're storing some blood, they say, because the hospital's got too much blood stored. And I don't know if that was ever a thing. That's a Seinfeld episode 2, is they store their blood in the apartment. I get a lot of emails saying, we need you to come donate blood. We don't have enough blood. There's a blood shortage. So I don't know if it was ever a thing where there was too much blood available to be used in emergencies. But that is what they're saying. But if the kids had known that, they probably wouldn't have taken it seriously. They would have known that was a literal red flag. So they say the schedule's changed, and then they go in. The kids go home, and they go down to the basement and they open that last lock, and wouldn't you know it, there's a coffin, and the kid's in the coffin, and it opens, and he does his smiley little kid vampire thing. They say no one would ever suspect a kid of being a vampire. I'm pretty sure they suspected the kid because they suspected the whole family. But anyway, uh, that last image of the kid in the coffin, popping his eyes open and grinning with his vampire teeth, that is the one that is seared in my memory. Now, in the middle of this, the Midnight Society, they cut back to the Midnight Society, and someone poured this red drink that looks like the blood in the story. And I guess they don't ever drink it, because at the end of the episode, they all stand around the fire and then pour the red drink into the fire. That's how they extinguish the fire. So I wonder what it was, what it tasted like, if it was blood. They brought it, but they didn't drink it, or maybe they drank it, but then they each had seconds, and that's what they poured in. It seemed like a weird ending. But, yeah, so that one was that one. And then the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Sorcerer's Apprentice. This was probably my least favorite of the three. Just not as interesting. I don't specifically recall having seen it. The only thing that I kind of remembered is it features a snake staff, rather like Jafar's from Aladdin. And I don't know if this, let's see, when did this air? This one aired in October of 1992. Aladdin came out. I'm sure Aladdin came out in, Aladdin came out in 1992. So, would they have had, when in 1992 though? Would they have, in November of 1992, and this aired in October. So, maybe they'd seen it in the trailer or something and they based it on that, but it seems like they would have been trying to capitalize on the popular Aladdin movie, except the Aladdin movie hadn't come out yet. But maybe people knew they got the idea of it. Or maybe snake staffs are common in these kinds of stories. I don't know. I've wasted too much time trying to figure that out live on the video. At the beginning, again, the Midnight Society, they're on their way to the clearing. It's dark, and they pull a prank with an open grave where they have a dummy sit up as though it's popping out of its grave, and that scares whoever. I forget exactly who, maybe Frank. But they and then the skull from that dummy, they pass it around during the story. This is another Betty Ann story. Betty Ann? You have to make sure, because Dorothy Ann is the Magic School Bus, and that's fresh in my mind. So it starts with this, I guess, young woman running around in the dark. We don't see her face too specifically, but we see that she's got a red snake tattoo on her arm, and we see her at this school. We don't know that it's a school at the time, I guess. She's hiding something in one of those cage buckets, kind of like a lobster trap, and she lowers it down into a sewer, and that is all we see. That's like the prelude to the action. And then we flash forward, I guess 25 years. Yeah, it must be 25 years, because later on they say that this room has been sealed off for 25 years, and it turns out the room is the pool, and a school with a pool is going to use it no matter what happens there, especially if it's not a death. But just the idea that the school has a pool as part of its complex and it doesn't use it, as someone who went to two schools where I had to take the bus to use a pool at a different school when that came up in gym, that just seems weird. So the main characters are Dean and Alex. I thought it was Alice for a while, but it's Alex. And Dean is bad at school things, and he's also bad at people things. So he's lonely and gets not such great grades, but he's got one friend, Alex. And he takes particular interest in world cultures class, which I guess is kind of history, social studies, but sounds better and more useful. And in particular, he takes an interest in a Jafar staff, which belonged to someone called Goth, according to the visiting Dr. Oliver. And he is later hypnotized by the staff. And after he is hypnotized by the staff, and he goes to the like, school basement or whatever and retrieves the thing that was hidden. He starts to do well on tests, but he does well on tests because he can now hypnotize the teacher. So we see him take a blank test to the teacher, hand it in, and she gets all upset, and then he just glares at her, and she says, "Oh yes, you got an A+ on the test." And he becomes also popular with kids because, again, he is hypnotizing them and forming a cult, the cult of Goth. Maybe this was Nickelodeon saying Goths are bad and the Goths are a cult, but I feel like Nickelodeon wouldn't do that. But anyway, that's just a thing. They are all dressed in dark colors and black, mostly black, and so they're goth. They might be stand-ins for goth. Anyway, but with his new friends, he ditches Alex, and she, of course, starts to get suspicious and worried because she's a good friend, and notices that he's stealing acid, so that he can perform a little ritual, which brings the floating head of Goth, so that he can have a conversation directly with his new overlord. And this also involves putting, I guess it's a diamond or a jewel or something, a giant one, that the woman at the beginning hid and that he then found, and he puts it in the snake's mouth, and that is part of the ritual, which also includes pouring acid on leaves, and has a conversation about the ritual. They have to have more acid and more leaves, and do it in the pool, in the room that's been sealed off. And the floating head, at one point, Alex is spying on him, and she makes a little bit of noise as she tries to get away when she realizes what's going on. And so we see, what do we see? We see the floating head kind of go, and it's always funny when the floating head, which is generally some kind of supernatural being, shows any kind of human reaction or anxiety. I think that's probably what they were going for, because it's just funny when that happens, because they're so mystical and powerful, but then they go, and it's so that's fun. Alex tries to get some explanation from Dr. Oliver, but she has gone. She was only a temporary teaching guest at the school, but she stayed long enough for, like, this seems to take place over a course of at least a week or two. And the chemistry teacher, I guess it is, who is the one who gave him an A+ on the test he didn't take, is the one who reveals to Alex that people have been taken over because she expresses concern about the cult and the snake staff and everything, and so the chemistry teacher says, "Relax and join us and join Goth," and starts cackling, and that I kind of remembered, but I'm not sure. I'm not certain it wasn't. That's not, because that happens a lot, cackling older women characters. But that was the only part of the episode that was slightly familiar to me. So it might be one that I only saw once, or I only saw the latter half of it, but I don't think I saw it. So we get a typical scene of possessed kid who ditched his friend. The friend is concerned, but he says, "But now I'm good at everything. Now I'm the leader of students. I'm doing something important. I was just a loser before." And we get that scene, and then they tie up Alex, take her to the pool. They put in the belladonna leaves. They put in the acid. Starts smoking. Goth comes back to life, and the kid playing Dean, I wrote down, he's got very Anakin Skywalker vibes, very Hayden Christensen. And unlike a lot of people who make YouTube videos, I do not consider that to be an insult. I thought it worked. I thought it worked for Anakin, and it works for this character. But then Alex somehow snaps him out of it as Goth comes back to life, and or maybe she takes the jewel out of the snake's mouth. I don't know, but he remembers having seen on the tests that he didn't take, or maybe the test that he fails at the beginning of the episode, that chlorine what does chlorine do? It kills bacteria, and he figures the leaves are organic, and there's still a tub of chlorine, a big canister of it by the pool, and he pours it in, or maybe Alex pours it in on his suggestion, and Goth goes away because it destroys the leaves, I guess, so they can't react with the acid. It's, again, not my favorite of these 3 episodes that I watched. And then the last thing that we see, Dr. Oliver comes by and retrieves the snake staff, because all the kids that have been following him, all the goths, as it were, dressed in black, they snap out of it. They just kind of walk away silently, not saying anything to each other, like, what happened to us? Why are we all here? And but then Dr. Oliver comes in, retrieves the snake staff, and says to the staff, "Don't worry, my lord. I planted Jules in high schools all around the country. She's a visiting professor type person." So takes the snake staff. Snake staff possesses a kid. Kid goes looking for the jewel. That was her at the beginning of the episode. So anyway, that's that episode. And then the last episode, Jake and the Leprechaun. This was my favorite of the 3. I don't think I had seen it before, but it was my favorite of the 3 because this show is kind of like Wishbone. Are You Afraid of the Dark is kind of like Wishbone in that it explores storytelling, not to the extent that Wishbone does, but because it's the same pretty much structure, the same framing device over and over again. But in this particular case, let's see, Frank, I guess, was going to tell the story, but he yields to Eric, the character Eric, because Eric has had a death in the family, and that was his grandfather, who came from Ireland and loved to tell stories, especially scary stories. And so Eric wants to tell his grandfather's favorite story. And he mentions pixies and leprechauns, and the kids ask, "What's a pixie? What's a leprechaun?" Which they wouldn't, because they're kids who like to tell scary stories. But I guess for the kids in the viewing audience, the television audience, they wanted to ask these questions just to clear up the terminology that is going to be used. So, but it's a nice passing stories along, generational storytelling sort of angle for the episode. And he mentioned he brings a hat along. It was his grandfather's hat. He says that his grandfather got the hat from a leprechaun. And there's a special thing that you say when you make a deal with a leprechaun. What's mine's yours and what's yours is mine, or something like that. Yours be mine and mine be yours. So the gist of the episode is, and it's another kind of it's an episode. It's a story that could. Just got to plug in my computer. It's a story that feels like it would come from the older generation, because it's about a folktale, and it's about a play. Older forms of storytelling, so it doesn't take place. I mean, the characters kind of dress. It has modern trappings, but it doesn't take place in a noticeably modern milieu. So it's Jake wants to be an actor. I think that's the first line of the story. So he gets cast in, and he's a kid. Jake is a kid. Gets cast in a play called Will-o'-the-Wisp, and so the first thing we see is a rehearsal, but we don't know it's a rehearsal. We see Jake the kid, and he's being tormented by a guy with pointy ears and stuff, who I think we're supposed to think as a goblin or something. And then a guy with an Irish accent, supposedly a leprechaun character, sitting in a tree, comes to his rescue. And then something happens and the rehearsal ends. Does it say? Well, the rehearsal comes to an end. I think someone's forgetting some lines or something. And Jake, we hear that he's very he admires the Irish actor, and wants to be like him, and he wants to drink his tea. It feels like the guy's got a special tea that helps him prepare and keeps his voice in good shape. So he learns about the tea from, I think it's the stage manager, and then he goes to a botanist, or it seems to be a botanist character, who is a little person, and when he asks for the specific ingredients in the tea, the botanist says, "No, this is not good. This is evil. You're not supposed to be doing this. I won't be part of this." Doesn't have an Irish accent, I don't think. So he's confused and disappointed and goes back and rehearses, and then eventually goes back. Maybe, I guess the little person does have an Irish accent. He's Sean O'Shaney, and the play is about a leprechaun who saves a boy from the goblin by turning the boy into a leprechaun. And we find out that's kind of the plot. The botanist says, "Well, that's what this tea would do," and the incantation in the play is the incantation that would do it, but it would turn you into something else. And I wasn't quite clear on the mythology at work here, but that's basically what the play and the episode are about. And so, when the actor's name is Aaron, it's probably spelled Aaron because it's a male actor, but probably based on Ireland, which also is sometimes known as Erin, Erin. So there's that. I know it seems like I wasn't that into this episode, but I was. Yours be mine and mine be yours. Learns about that, and as a way of, I think that's a way that it's supposed to be a way that leprechauns force an exchange. Like if they want something, it's like, well, I'll trade you for this, and if they say that, then you have to exchange it. So the Jake at one point notices that after he drinks from the flask, which actually has, so in the play, in order to turn the kid into a leprechaun, the leprechaun passes him a flask, and it's not clear, so it should be empty, but it has something in it, and Jake notices that the thing in it is changing his voice, and then later on it is noticed that he's got pointy ears, but the botanist has come to a rehearsal and is sneaking around backstage and knocks over a tree in order to stop the rehearsal because he can see that the boy is being transformed, and he wants to stop it. And then they both, and Jake is revealed to then have actual pointy ears, not makeup pointy ears or prosthetic pointy ears. So they break into Aaron's dressing room and rummage through his stuff, and when he comes in and they're hiding, he's revealed to be a banshee, and he's trying to turn Jake into a banshee, just like the leprechaun in the play turns the boy into a leprechaun, but not to save him in this case. Again, I'll have to watch the episode again to catch everything. It was particularly deep lore in this one, but that's one of the reasons I think that it was so effective. Let's see. And they mention that banshees they can trick you to turning into a banshee by making you recite a special oath, the oath in the play, and drinking the tea. So they get to that point in the play. It's opening night. Apparently there have been no more rehearsals for this to happen at in between the disastrous rehearsal and the opening night. So they're out opening night. There's an audience, and the leprechaun character tosses the flask to the boy and starts him saying the oath, and the boy tosses the flask back and says the oath back, I guess in such a way that so that it won't work. And then the most threatening thing to happen in any of these Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes so far happens, and the leprechaun character says, "Who have you been talking to, boy?" and then disappears. And I thought that was a pretty great, creepy, threatening thing to happen. Like, you're on to me, and there's an audience, and I will still get you. So I really like that. And then he tosses the flask into the audience as he disappears, and then Jake is turned into a toad. I don't recall exactly how or why, but then the little botanist comes on, and he's got apparently the banshee's tail in a bag. He pulls it out and he says, "I'll give you back your tail if you turn the boy back into a boy. Yours be mine, mine be yours." And it works. Again, I have to watch it again to be clear on the reason, but the audience just loves it and goes crazy for it. And the banshee disappears. So that's the end of the play, and I guess I think that he finishes with "the play was never performed again," which makes me wonder if it's been performed over and over again just without magic, so it doesn't actually work or threaten anybody. But it made me wonder about the play and the play's performance history and how often it's actually been used to turn someone into something else. And then the end music reminded me of a Great Big Sea song called "Fast as I Can." The music that played, it's a version of the Dark "Are You Afraid of the Dark" theme song, but with kind of an Irish lilt. And since Great Big Sea is a Celtic rock band, Canadian, not Irish, but still, it made sense that it reminded me of that. So that was my favorite of the three. I don't think I'd seen it before, but I do think I will watch it again. It's a lot of fun. And I'm sorry if my recollection of it was messy, but it's the best things that you got to go back and, best or worst, but I like this one. So the best things that you have to go back and look at over and over again in order to fully grasp. And I will be doing that with this one. The Tale of the Dark Music is next, and The Tale of the Prom Queen. That video will be next Thursday, and Tale of the Prom Queen, based on Resurrection Mary, so I'm going to look that up, and if that, like the monkey's paw, is something that I could read to the internet as a companion piece to that video, then I will do that, but it looks like it's a historical thing. Anyway, yours be mine and mine be yours.